What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. Today's fanfic is titled, What if Naruto built the ultimate Uzumaki harem after discovering his clan? Part 2. What if Naruto build powerful harem with Uzumaki old women? Part 2. Scene change. The sun had set by the time Haku and Naruto had arrived. We're here, Haku announced as she waved her arm towards a conical building a couple of stories tall that was suspended off of the ground by wires attached to the surrounding trees. The entrance to the building was a wooden rampway that was also suspended by wires that were attached to the bottom of the building. All in all, the building looked like a hanging, upside-down top. Naruto had a nervous grin on his face as he stared at the strange building. Haku-chan, what did you say your guardian did again? Private security, she answered as she began dragging the blonde up the rampway and towards the entry door. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. There's no way a guy working private security lives in a place like this, Naruto thought. When they reached the entry door, Naruto turned to Haku and just decided to ask her flat out, Haku, are you trying to kill me? What? Haku gasped as she let go of the door handle and spun to face Naruto. I would never kill you. She won't, a rough voice rasped from behind Naruto, but I might. Before Naruto could spin around, he felt a large hand grab him by the nape of his neck as he was lifted into the air and carried through the entry door. Up in the trees, Kakashi's shadow clone was dumbfounded, a single thought playing through its mind as he moved to infiltrate the building through a window on the lower level. Zabuza's alive. The clone was so preoccupied by that thought that he didn't notice a subtle mist began to roll in and surround the hideout. Nor did he notice a nearly 7-foot-tall man appear from behind one of the thick tree trunks. Naughty Zabu-chan, what are you doing with a Konoha nin? Kushimaru wondered aloud. He thought about it for a few seconds, then shrugged it off as non-important. Zabuza would die tonight, so any plans he had were all for naught. Kushimaru then pulled some of the mist from the air to form a water clone of himself. He ordered the clone, go watch Zabu-chan, I'll give you the signal when I'm done preparing out here. The clone nodded as it went to infiltrate the building from another window on the lower level. Scene change. So, brat, you want to date Haku? Zabuza asked as he dropped the blonde on the floor, suppressing an amused chuckle as he saw the blonde genin spin around and get himself into a boxer's stance. He's improved, Zabuza noted, but he still has some holes in his defense. Raise your right hand. What? Naruto asked, sounding confused, but he refused to lower his stance as he quickly glanced around the room he was brought to. 4 exits, the entryway he was brought through, a ladder behind him, a window to his right that was 10 feet above him and a window to his left that was near his height but was 20 feet away. The room featured 3 target dummies peppered with senbon, as well as crates with, presumably, other shinobi supplies. You're leaving your right side open, Zabuza pointed out. Naruto blinked as he looked down at his right side. Was he leaving himself open? He didn't think so. Was this all a trick by Zabuza to lower his guard? As if Zabuza could read Naruto's mind, the missing nin said, if I wanted to kill you, I would have done it. Now, raise your right hand so that it's just about level with your chin, that's it. Balance your weight on the balls of your feet. Good, you're looking more like a competent shinobi, especially since you've gotten rid of that atrocious eyesore of a jumpsuit. Hey, orange is awesome, damn it. Naruto dropped his stance as he pointed an accusing finger at Zabuza for the slight towards his favorite color. It ain't the right color for a shinobi, brat. Zabuza growled. What would you know, no brows? Naruto mocked. Why you little? Zabuza's right hand reached over his right shoulder for his sword, but before he could wrap his hand around Kubikiribocho's handle, he felt an ice-cold chop to the top of his head. Zabuza-sama. You are not going to kill Naruto-kun. Haku admonished her master as she shook off the bits of ice that clung to her hand. Unaware of the fact that Naruto was watching her with widened eyes, having just borne witness to a violent side of Haku that he had never seen before. Zabuza rubbed the growing bump on his head as he threw a pitying look towards Naruto. Brat, if Haku treats you any way she treats me, I pity you. But Haku-chan's never hit me, Naruto stated. What? Zabuza's chin was in danger of ripping his neck bandages because of how far his jaw dropped at that revelation. Then how does she get you to stop doing things then? Naruto simply blushed and started to study a very interesting crack on the ceiling, while Haku simply giggled as she walked over to Naruto, looped her arm through his and rested her head on his shoulder. She then turned to Zabuza and said 2 words, Hisame-sensei. Zabuza crossed his arms over his sleeveless black shirt as he turned his head and studied a very interesting crack on the wall, thankful that his neck bandages hid the slight blush that stood out on his light grayish skin. Right, moving on. Zabuza then addressed Naruto. Brat, you must be wondering why you're here and why I'm alive, right? Naruto nodded, as he threw a wary glance towards Haku. Zabuza noted this. Don't worry, if Haku had wanted to hurt you she would have done so by now. Zabuza unconsciously rubbed his neck. She can be quite vicious with those senbon of hers. Naruto looked closely at the target dummies and saw that one of them had 2 senbon pierced through its neck. It looked just like. Naruto jumped away from Haku and pointed a finger at her. You're the Oinin who took out Zabuza. But he said. Naruto pointed at Zabuza. That you were, and. Naruto pointed back at Haku, then to Zabuza, then to Haku again until finally, he threw up his hands and yelled out, just what the hell is going on? Zabuza stepped forward. Listen up, Brad, because I'm only going to explain this once. You remember when I fought your teacher? Seeing Naruto nod, Zabuza continued, and do you remember what I said about Kiri's graduation ceremony? Naruto's flinch told Zabuza that the blonde remembered. What he didn't tell you is that Kiri was even worse than that. Have you ever heard of the bloodline purges? No, I haven't, Naruto responded, but what does this have to do with you wanting to meet with me? I'm getting to it, Zabuza growled. During these purges, people like Haku were hunted down to extinction. Zabuza gestured towards the girl in question, a girl who had yet to move from the spot where Naruto had separated from her. She was looking down towards the ground, her bangs shadowing her face. Naruto gasped, but why? There have been a lot of civil wars in Kiri, and people with bloodlines featured prominently in all of them. So much so that people began seeing bloodline holders as harbingers of war. Zabuza shrugged, irrational, but because of this view, you had people start to believe that if they got rid of bloodline holders the wars would stop. Zabuza looked towards Haku, and his eyes softened, but the wars didn't stop. Regardless of how many bloodline holders they purged. Naruto walked over to Haku, lifted her chin and flinched when he saw the look in her eyes. The warmth and playfulness he had come to associate with her chocolate brown eyes were long gone, replaced with a cold lifelessness that he had seen reflected in the mirror more times than he would care to admit. Naruto did what he did on their first date, hold her to his chest and try to shield her from the cruelness of the world. Naruto nodded over Haku's shoulder, motioning Zabuza to continue. It was one day that I was on patrol that I met Haku, and saw that she had the same eyes that I had, cold, lifeless. She had no purpose, so I decided to give her one as a shinobi. I trained her, teaching her what I knew for the next couple of years, and things were good, for a time. Then Yagura came to power, and everything got worse. Under Yagura, Kiri really lived up to its nickname of, the Village of the Bloody Mist. How bad? Naruto asked, though he soon regretted it. Zabuza took a shaky breath. Yagura allowed Kushimaru, another swordsman, to string up dissenters along the outside of the cage's office, while they were alive. Some of them were children. Naruto pulled back from the hug to look down at Haku, just to make sure that she was still there. And he was glad he did, because otherwise he would have never caught the slight movement from the window to his left as he heard a high-pitched voice state, "Those were good times, Zabu-chan." Naruto threw Haku to his left as a silver blur flew through the window, cutting a few strands of Haku's hair as she was falling to the ground, as it continued on its path through Naruto's right shoulder to bury itself in the wall behind him. Naruto let out a yell of pain as he reflexively fell to his knees and reached towards his right shoulder, or at least, he tried to. He found that he was kept standing by some unknown force. When he looked at his shoulder, he saw some of his blood hanging in the air. Naruto focused his eyes and saw that his blood was clinging to some razor wire. Naruto! Haku yelled out as she saw the blonde's bloody right shoulder. She got up, her hands glowing white as she channeled her Hyoten chakra so that she could seal Naruto's wound with ice, but before she could even take 2 steps Zabuza barked out, "Stop! Zabuza! Naruto's hurt. I need." Haku began to plead with her master, but she was cut off. "I know," he said, his eyes never leaving the window to his right, as his hand grasped the handle of Kubikiribocho, "but if you take 1 step closer that wire through his shoulder will cut him in half." Zabuza roared at the window, "Isn't that right, Kushimaru? Ruin my fun. Why don't you, Zabu-chan?" Kushimaru said as he climbed through the window, a loop of razor wire wound tightly around his right hand. Dismemberment loses half its fun when the prey expects it. "Why are you here? Isn't the war still going on in Kiri?" Zabuza asked as he put some more weight on his right foot, ready to spring at a moment's notice. Ah, Kushimaru raised his left hand and wagged his finger. "You move and I channel my wind chakra through this wire, and you know just how messy that can be." When Kushimaru saw Zabuza lean back he continued, "That's better. As for why I'm here, a little imp told us that he had a certain demon under his employ, and that the demon was injured. It was too good an opportunity to pass up. Although," Kushimaru narrowed his eyes behind his mask, "it appears your injuries have been greatly exaggerated." "Gato." Zabuza growled out the name with all of the malice in his heart, sounding more demon than man. "And what does the imp get out of this? Distribution rights for his drugs in Kiri." Kushimaru then pointed at Haku, and the bloodline freak. "I believe he wants to turn her into his whore. Don't you dare touch her." Naruto yelled out, his voice sounding rougher, deeper than usual. If one were to take a close look at his eyes, they would see that they had started to turn from his sapphire blue to a bright violet that was tinged with red. Kushimaru glanced towards the boy, the only sounds prey should make are screaming. Kushimaru tugged on the wire in his hand and rolled his wrist to the right, getting grunts of pain from the boy as the wire sliced through the muscles and bones of his shoulder. "Oh, someone has a pain tolerance," Kushimaru noted, sounding gleeful. "Those prey make the best sounds." Unknown to 3 of the occupants in the room, a shadow clone of one Hatake Kakashi was watching from the other window, waiting for his opportunity to intervene. Though if the blonde could hear the Jonin's inner dialogue he would be more concerned about what the Jonin was planning to do to him, rather than the hole through his shoulder. "If this boy gets through this alive, I'll make his previous punishment look like a walk in the park." When the clone saw Kushimaru start to torture his student, he saw his opportunity. He leapt through the window, throwing a brace of shuriken at Kushimaru's right arm as he was dropping. Then as he landed, he charged a Chidori, 1,000 birds, in his right hand, the blue lightning crackling and chirping like its namesake, as he channeled chakra to his legs and rushed towards Kushimaru. The clone's plan was half effective. While he was able to separate Kushimaru from his wire, he was unable to hit the man with his Chidori, due to the tunnel vision one experiences when using the technique without the Sharingan. Kushimaru sidestepped the clone, and when he was about to dispel it with a chop to its throat, Zabuza came in and beheaded Kushimaru. Only to be shocked when the head and body turned into water, a water clone. Zabuza didn't even have the time to think about how or when Kushimaru made the switch, when he felt a sandaled foot kick him in the back and send him flying out the window. "Let's play, Zabu-chan." Just before Kakashi's clone ran out of chakra, he turned towards Naruto and ordered him to run, exploding in a puff of white smoke as he did so. Scene change. Kakashi and Naruto were sitting on the roof of Tazuna's house watching the sunset. Though unknown to the Jonin at this time, the blonde sitting next to him was a shadow clone. "What will we do when Haku-chan doesn't turn out to be an enemy?" the clone asked his sensei. Kakashi let out a sigh. "If she isn't an enemy, then I guess that's up to you and Haku to decide." However, Kakashi closed his one eye as he prepared himself for his student's inevitable blow-up. "If she turns out to be an enemy, she might have to be eliminated. Kakashi was not disappointed. What do you mean we would kill her? Naruto roared so loud that Kakashi swore he saw the ocean recede slightly. Might, I said, might, Kakashi repeated until the genin had calmed down. Though it's possible, I don't think it's probable, okay. Well, I don't think it's possible at all, Naruto huffed as he crossed his arms, turned away from his sensei and looked towards the dirt road. Though his planned pouting session was interrupted by the appearance of an unknown man with waist-length white hair, dressed in some kabuki garb, running down said road. Hey, sensei, is there some traveling show in Nami that we don't know about? Kakashi looked where his student was looking, and was promptly shocked. Jiraiya-sama, he gasped, what's he doing in Nami? Jiraiya-sama, must be some important dude, for sensei to react like this. Naruto rubbed his chin as he examined the man who was getting closer to the house, and seemed to be making a beeline towards the roof. Before Naruto could ask his sensei who Jiraiya was, Kakashi had jumped down from the roof and sprinted to meet Jiraiya. Naruto shrugged and followed his sensei. Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi greeted, what brings you to Nami no Kuni? Sensei wanted me to look into something, Jiraiya told him, though I was surprised to find Nami in such dire straits. Tell me, have you had any run-ins with Gato or his associates? Kakashi nodded as he began to explain what happened. Yes, my team and I ran into one of the 7 swordsmen. You've already faced Kurihara Kushimaru. Jiraiya's outburst cut off Kakashi. Though Kakashi was more confused by the content of Jiraiya's shout than the volume. Kurihara Kushimaru. Kakashi parroted. Yes, Kushimaru, tall guy with shaggy blonde hair and a predilection for crucifixion. You know him? Jiraiya asked sarcastically. Hey, what's going on? Naruto asked as he came to a stop next to his sensei. Beat it, brat. This is a grown-up conver. Jiraiya began to tell off who he assumed was one of Kakashi's students when he paused and actually looked at the kid. Spiky blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, give the kid a more angular face and get rid of the whiskers and the kid would be a spitting image of Minato. Minato. Naruto tilted his head. My name's Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure. Naruto finished his introduction with a bright grin. Jiraiya shook his head to clear the image of a young Minato overlapping his son. Sorry, brat, you just reminded me of someone else. Regardless, I was talking with your sensei about Kurihara Kushimaru, Kakashi stated, cutting off Jiraiya. Kakashi looked pale, as if he had just seen a ghost. And given that his shadow clone had just dispelled, it's safe to say he just had. Yeah, Kushimaru's. Jiraiya was about to tell Kakashi what he and his toads discovered when the Jonin cut him off again. Kushimaru is on the island. He's here to hunt down Momochi Zabuza, and he's wounded Naruto. What? Jiraiya turned the same shade of pale as Kakashi, as he lifted a shaky finger and pointed it towards the Naruto, standing in front of him. Then who's this? Jiraiya was beginning to lose it. He had just met his godson, and now you're telling him he's off fighting some sewing sadist. A shadow clone, Kakashi growled as he leveled a glare so fierce at the clone that it could curdle stone. Though how? I don't know. How could you let a genin fool you? Jiraiya sounded incredulous. Guys, shouldn't we be going to rescue the real me? The clone asked, reminding the 2 men of the more pressing issue at hand. Both men blinked and soon got their mission faces back on. Tell me where he is, Kakashi, Jiraiya ordered as he started gathering a massive amount of chakra. His godson was in danger, and he'd be damned if he didn't use everything in his power to protect him. There's no such thing as overkill when it comes to protecting what you love. Kakashi pointed behind Jiraiya, a couple of miles west through the forest. It's a conical building, you can't miss it. Jiraiya nodded as bit his right thumb and flew through 5 hand seals, boar, dog, bird, monkey and ending on ram, Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique. Jiraiya yelled out as he slammed his right hand on the ground and was soon surrounded by a plume of white smoke. Jiraiya boy, why have you summoned us? We were just about to settle down for dinner. An elderly male voice asked from inside the smoke. Ma made her special cricket casserole. Yeah, I don't want my dinner to go cold, an elderly female voice said. The smoke cleared to reveal two toads. The male was green with white hair styled in a mohawk, thick eyebrows of the same color, and he was wearing a simple cape. The female was lime green with purple marking the back and top of her head and was wearing a simple cape as well. These were the two great sage toads of Mount Myoboku, Fukasaku and Shima. But to members and summoners of the Toad clan, they are known as Pa and Ma. I'm sorry, Pa, Ma, but I need your help and time is of the essence, Jiraiya told them. Horizontal line. Flashback. Scene change, you know what it is. I need to enter Senin Modo, Sage Mode, Jiraiya requested, his coal eyes burning fiercely. What? Both Toad sages croaked out at the same time. Shima looked stunned while Fukasaku decided to take a glance at their surroundings. They were on a dirt road in front of a building that looked like an old fishing inn, with two other people around them. One person was Hitaki Kakashi, someone that Fukasaku had met before, while the other one was a blonde boy that nearly made Fukasaku's eyes leave his skull because he looked like the spitting image of one of their previous summoners, Namikaze Minato. He just about gasped out Minato's name, but was able to catch himself in time. It was up to the boy's godfather or the Sandaime to tell him of his heritage. Fukasaku noted that, while both Kakashi and the boy looked tense, they didn't appear to be in any immediate danger. Nor did they appear to be any immediate threat to their summoner, and certainly not threatening enough to warrant Jiraiya summoning he and his wife, Fukasaku commented as such. Jiraiya Boyo, I think summoning is to deal with Kakashi Boyo and this tadpole might be a bit excessive, don't Cha think. Fukasaku's comments finally broke Shima out of her stupor, and made her aware of the two other people surrounding them and, unlike her husband, she had no such control over her mental filter when she laid eyes on Naruto. Honey, look, Shima gasped as she placed a hand on her husband's shoulder and pointed at the blonde boy, a blonde boy who was looking quite confused by the conversation. It's Minato-chan's tadpole. Fukasaku palmed his face, producing a meaty smack. Jiraiya and Kakashi were stunned stupid, not expecting Shima to reveal state's secrets. Naruto, well, Naruto just looked confused. The gears of his mind grinding as they tried to process what the old lady toad said. Minato's tadpole, Naruto muttered, a tadpole's a baby toad, baby. Naruto eyes bugged out as he gasped out a question he hadn't asked in years, do you know who my father is? Jiraiya recovered from his shock and sent Kakashi an Anbu hand signal and gestured towards the clone, terminate. Shima nodded her head, of course I do, silly. He was. Before the Naruto clone could hear her answer, he was dispelled by a chop to the back of the neck. Fukasaku turned on his wife, and began grinding his forehead into her own. Damn it, woman. You know the boy isn't supposed to know about his heritage yet. Shima pushed back, her eyes fierce as they rehashed an argument the couple has had off and on for the past 13 years. Well, ya ol coot, forgive me for forgetting such a stupid rule. A tadpole should know where he came from. Both toads were releasing growls that would make a tiger envious, as they glared one another down. Before their argument could come to blows, Jiraiya knelt down and separated the two, while shouting, enough. We don't have time for this. The tadpole you're arguing about is in danger, and I need to get to him yesterday. Both toads gasped, turned to each other, nodded they would be discussing this later and hopped on Jiraiya's shoulders. Lead on, Fukasaku commanded, as he and his wife began gathering nature chakra, expanding their senses as they did so. Jiraiya nodded, charged chakra to his legs, and shot off towards the west, cratering the ground from his push-off. Jiraiya was a blur of white as he rushed through the forest, leaping from branch to branch. He was confident that with Sage Mode he would utterly annihilate anything in his path, though his plan hit a snag a few minutes into his journey when a wave of malevolence hit the two toads' senses and made them lose their concentration. QB. What? Jiraiya nearly lost his footing, but recovered in time as he stopped on a branch. Has the seal broken? No, Fukasaku said, though you will want to have a chakra-suppressing seal handy. just in case he draws on more of the beast's chakra. We don't have time for that, Jiraiya argued. It takes me 5 minutes to draw one of those seals. I'll just use the Gogyo Fuin, 5-pronged seal, to cut off his access to its chakra. But what if? Fukasaku was going to continue the argument when his wife cut him off and hopped off Jiraiya's shoulder and onto the tree trunk in front of them. Jiraiya-chan, make the seal. Ha, gather nature chakra. I'll go watch over the tadpole. Before either man could argue, Shima shot off, a purple blur to their eyes. Fukasaku let out a sigh, a fond smile on his face. Make the seal. I pity anyone who gets in between Ma and a tadpole in danger. Scene change. When Zabuza was defenestrated, and his back made contact with the ground outside his base, only one thought went through his mind. Damn, if Kushimaru had come a day later, I could be using chakra right now. Indeed, the medicine that Haku had given him to accelerate his healing was still in his system. He knows this because as he was falling, he instinctively channeled chakra to his back to cushion his fall, something all shinobi are taught to do. Unfortunately for Zabuza, when he did so he felt lances of pain running up and down his spine, feeling as if Haku had decided to use his back as target practice for her Senbon. Suffice to say, he did not have the most pleasant of landings, but he still had the presence of mind to curl himself into a ball and roll along the ground to disperse the force of his fall. As Zabuza got to his feet, he felt that the ground was softer than he remembered, as if it had been recently dug up. Before his mind could even process this information, his body reacted. Zabuza jumped into the air, while simultaneously stabbing Kubikiribocho straight into the dirt so he could stand on its cross guard, just as a web of wires rose from the ground and sought to chop off his legs. The wires tried to constrict Kubikiribocho, but were severed when they came into contact with its edge. Is that the best you've got? Zabuza yelled into the mist with more confidence than he felt. He reached for his right hip only to curse, as he realized that he left his hip pouch in the base. No other weapons. No chakra. This is setting up for a grand old time, Zabuza mentally snarked as he was coming to the realization that he was, in scientific terms. But he would be damned if he went down before making Kushimaru bleed. Zabuza closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to calm his racing heart that was pounding in his ears, and waited. He waited, and he listened. A rustle of leaves to his left was all the warning Zabuza needed to hop off his sword, grabbing the handle as he did so, and not a moment too soon as Nuibari came shooting through the mist, passing through where Zabuza's head had just been, missing his head by inches as it disappeared into the mist behind him. But Zabuza wasn't out of the woods yet. Landing on the ground, Zabuza hefted his blade and held it behind his back as he spun to the right just as Nuibari returned from where it disappeared and dug a furrow into the flat of Kubikiribocho's blade, leaving a trail of blue sparks and the sound of screeching metal in its wake as it once again vanished into the surrounding mist and into the hands of its owner. Zabuza turned to where Nuibari vanished, drawing his blade from his back and holding it in front of him as he took a quick step to his left as Nuibari came screaming at him again. Zabuza was able to bat the sewing needle to his right and send it flying into a tree, but it came at a cost. Nuibari hit the scar it left previously and was able to snap the blade, leaving Zabuza standing there with a third of his blade left in his hand and the other 2/3 on, falling to the ground with a big thunk. Ah, did poor Zabu-chan be weak? His be weighed. Kushimaru taunted, his voice surrounding Zabuza. Don't worry, she'll be just fine, after I feed her your blood. Zabuza snarled as he gave his shortened cleaver a few practice swings. Kushimaru ignored the comment, as he observed his prey. Zabuza had finished readjusting to the new weight of his blade and had decided to stand in a defensive stance behind the broken piece of his blade. Kushimaru had never fought Zabuza personally, though he had seen him fight and he knew that Zabuza was usually more aggressive. Kushimaru narrowed his eyes. Was Zabuza trying to lure him into a trap? Kushimaru decided to test this theory using his favorite method, taunting. Kushimaru cackled, feed her my blood. And how are you going to do that standing over there? Kushimaru watched Zabuza's body language for any sort of tell. A sudden tenseness, a witty retort, an angry outburst, anything at all. But Zabuza simply maintained his stance. Kushimaru drummed his fingers on the tree limb he was sitting on, his right hand still holding onto Nuibari's wire. Zabu-chan could still be luring me into a trap, or maybe. Kushimaru stopped drumming his fingers as a dark chuckle left his lips. The little imp was right, Zabu-chan was injured in his fight with Kakashi. Kushimaru tightened his grip on Nuibari's wire. He was going to have so much fun. Zabuza took a deep breath as he heard Kushimaru begin cackling like a hyena and the mist around him thickened. Scene change. When Haku saw Zabuza get kicked out the window, she was already rushing towards Naruto, her hands glowing white with trails of white fog leaking from them. She was thankful that dispelling the water clone of Kushimaru also dispelled the razor wire in Naruto's shoulder, because she didn't want to seal his wound with the wire still in there. Naruto-kun, she gasped, as she stepped closer to him and looked at his wound. Nuibari had torn straight through his right shoulder, muscle and bone, and had left Naruto's right arm limp. Haku's eyes moistened. With that kind of damage, it's entirely possible that Naruto would lose function in his right arm. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Haku-chan, Naruto assured her as his eyes began to lighten and his whiskers returned to normal. Though he could still feel something bubbling beneath the surface of his skin, waiting to be unleashed. I heal fast. I'm just glad you're okay. It's not okay. Haku shook her head as she placed her hands on Naruto's shoulder and began sealing it, slowly, as to ensure that the ice wouldn't have any cracks or faults. You shouldn't have gotten hurt. Naruto hissed as he felt the ice begin to form around his entry wound. Through gritted teeth he asked, who was the sewing freak? Kuriarere Kushimaru, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, and the Mizukage's loyal dog. Haku spat with such venom that Naruto was glad that Anko had helped train his immune system with her summons. And why do you hate him, other than the obvious reasons? Naruto gestured towards his shoulder that Haku was still sealing. The ice had covered the entry wound and was now creeping around and over his shoulder to the exit wound. Naruto felt like he would never look at a sewing needle the same way after today. Other than him and his master wanting to exterminate people like me. Nothing in particular, Haku snarked. Now be quiet, I need to make sure this ice is solid so you don't bleed out. Though Haku soon regretted her outburst when she saw the hurt look in Naruto's eyes. Sighing, Haku, temporarily, cut off the flow of chakra to her hands as she snaked her arms around Naruto's torso and drew him into a hug. I'm sorry for snapping, Naruto-kun, she whispered. It's just, Zabuza-sama is precious to me, just like you are precious to me. And the same, monster, that wants to see me destroyed, hurt you and might be hurting Zabuza right now. The next few minutes were quiet as Haku rested her hands on Naruto's exit wound and finished sealing it. She hoped it would hold for long enough for Naruto to get back to his sensei and team. When she was done, Haku drew Naruto closer to herself, whispering in his ear, Naruto, I need you to take your sensei's advice, run. Run, and don't look back. Before Naruto could respond, she silenced him with a kiss. The kiss was sweet, and all too short, it was a goodbye. Haku released Naruto, spun on her heel and rushed towards the window, making sure to pick up a pack filled with senbon on her way. She needed to help Zabuza. Wait. Naruto reached out with his left hand, running after Haku when he was struck by a wave of memories from the clone he left with Kakashi, the onslaught of memories bringing him to his knees as he held his head pain. It took him a moment to process the memories, but when he did, he was pissed. What the hell, Jiraiya, old toads who know who my father is. Exclamation mark quote. The feeling Naruto had felt earlier, the one bubbling underneath his skin, started to grow. It felt like liquid fire was running through his veins as a storm of emotions raged inside his mind. Confusion about his relationship with Haku, was any of it real, and how some old toads seemed to know who his dad was. Sadness about Haku's goodbye kiss, and finally, anger. Lots of anger. Anger about how the people close to him have been keeping secrets from him, Haku, Kakashi, the Hokage, who else knew about his heritage. And anger about the who put a goddamn hole in his shoulder. Naruto felt his canines begin to grow, his nails lengthen and sharpen, the ice on his shoulder steaming and cracking, the mangled flesh that was his shoulder sizzling and itching, as red chakra began to push out bloody pieces of bone, all the while a red haze overtook Naruto's vision. He wanted to hurt something. He wanted to kill something. And he had just the target in mind. The ice on Naruto's shoulder shattered into millions of pieces as he rushed out the window, his violet eyes teeming with bloodlust. So consumed by his rage, Naruto did not notice the dark chuckles that echoed out from the back of his mind. Scene change. When Haku leapt out of the window, the first thing she noticed was the thick mist surrounding the area, a mist that was heavily laced with chakra. Under normal circumstances, such a sight would put her at ease, because it meant that Zabuza was alive and was maintaining his Kurigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist technique, but these were far from normal circumstances. Her master was fighting one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, without his chakra. Haku landed on the ground and immediately felt something was off. The ground was upturned, like something buried had been dragged to the surface. Taking a deep breath, while channeling a bit of wind chakra to her lungs, Haku exhaled and dispersed a bit of the surrounding mist so she could see clearly, and she did not like what she found: broken razor wire, punctured trees, and a broken slab of Kubikiribocho missing its handle and a third of its blade. The signs of battle went deeper into the woods. Remembering her training, Haku took a deep breath to calm herself and then leapt into the trees, making sure to maintain her stealth, as well as keeping an eye out for any traps. Mainly wires. Haku traveled for a couple hundred meters before she heard grunts of pain, followed by crazed laughter, a bad sign. Haku leapt down to the forest floor and ghosted in between the trees, the sounds of laughter growing more manic and the grunts of pain softening as she crept closer to their source. Peeking out from behind a tree, Haku had to bite her lip from screaming out in rage, and giving away her position. Zabuza was strung up to a tree, arms outstretched, Kubikiribocho's remaining third laying by his feet, his clothes tattered and stained with blood, all the while Kushimaru stood in front of him, cackling. "Come on Zabu-chan, is this the best you've got?" Kushimaru twitched the finger of his right hand to tighten the wires wrapped around Zabuza's right bicep, drawing blood and a weak grunt from his prey. "I thought you were going to feed Kubikiribocho my blood, though it looks like only Nuibari is feasting tonight." Haku reached into her pack and grabbed 4 senbon. She placed 3 senbon in between the digits of her right hand, acting as makeshift claws, while she held the last senbon in her left hand in a throwing position. Ready, she threw her single senbon at Kushimaru, aiming for his right elbow joint. The 6 inches of steel seeking to bury itself deep into the madman's bone and, hopefully, sever the arm's ligament. Yet Haku wasn't finished, for as her senbon was flying she used her now free hand, to form the bird seal as she inhaled and channeled chakra to her lungs. The senbon pierced Kushimaru's elbow, eliciting a yelp of pain that was soon cut off by that Kushimaru dispelling into a puddle of water, a Mizu Bunshin water clone. Sensing a presence behind her, Haku spun on heel, wind release, air bullets, and spat multiple bullets of air at Kushimaru, who had Nuibari pulled back in his right hand, poised to thrust through Haku's spine. The air bullets ripped through Kushimaru like paper, and continued on to tear chunks out of the trees surrounding them. Sadly, instead of dripping blood, this Kushimaru dripped water, another water clone. Having sustained enough damage, this clone also dispelled into a puddle of water, this one near her feet, just what Haku needed as she rapidly went through one-handed seals. Kekaki. Die. Mutant. Kushimaru cackled from above Haku as he dove towards her. Nuibari held right between his legs, seeking to impale her skull. Though he quickly had to scrunch into a ball to protect his vitals when Haku finished her hand seals, stomped on the puddle with her left foot and sent thousands of water needles rocketing towards him, Sensatsu Susho, 1,000 needles of death. Kushimaru's forearms and shins were peppered by razor-sharp, blue needles. He didn't know whether to be grateful or angered that the bloodline freak leapt away before his falling body could crush hers. Though the 2 extra senbon she threw into his left elbow as he was rolling away quickly made his mind up for him. "You bitch." Kushimaru snarled as he stood up, his left arm limp. Gato will be getting you with less limbs. Kushimaru flexed his left arm to see if he could move it, only to hiss in pain when he felt the metal needles grinding against his bones. If the girl wasn't a mutant, he would have been impressed. Deadly accuracy with Senbon, seamless use of two different releases, and capable of using one-handed seals. Zabuza had trained his little pet well, and now Kushimaru's only chance was to stall, hoping that the single water clone he left to maintain his Kirigakur no Jutsu, hidden mist technique, heard his yell of pain and was moving to intercept. What he wouldn't give for some divine intervention right about now. When I'm finished with you, I will have Gato's head, Haku stated coldly, tightening her grip on her Senbon claws, as she channeled some wind chakra through them, increasing their cutting power, and their reach by 4 inches. More than enough to separate Kushimaru's head from his shoulders. Kushimaru mentally cursed. From the look in the girl's eyes, she wasn't in the mood for talking. That remains to be seen. Kushimaru held Nuibari by its wire and began twirling the blade as he channeled his chakra through it, the sewing needle quickly becoming a blur as it kicked up dirt, grass, small rocks and branches, the mist surrounding them being blown away. Just as both shinobi were going to launch themselves at one another, a wave of malevolence overwhelmed them, freezing them both. Haku had never felt such a thing before, the suffocating bloodlust that constricted your throat, making it hard to breathe. Not even Zabuza-sama on his worst day could match such an output. She lost focus for a second, and that second cost her. Because, unfortunately for her, Kushimaru was familiar with this type of bloodlust, the bloodlust that only a Biju or their Jinchuriki could produce. Kushimaru prayed to the heavens and got a demon instead, though he could work with that. Kushimaru seized on Haku's lapse of focus and threw Nuibari just over her left shoulder, the wind pressure cutting Haku's cheek and severing strands of her raven hair. The pain brought Haku back to her current situation, yet before she could retaliate, Kushimaru had already begun to weave his web. Nuibari was caught by Kushimaru's water clone, who promptly threw it by Haku's right into his original, who caught it and threw it right back to his clone. The two Kushimaru were blurs of motion as they threw Nuibari back and forth over a dozen times to one another, wrapping up Haku in a cocoon of razor wire, causing her to lose her balance and fall, face first, to the ground. Haku knew better than to struggle, otherwise the wire would slice her to ribbons, though that didn't stop her from sending the most vicious glare she could muster at the sewing sadist. Kekaki, Kushimaru walked up to the captured Haku, handing Nuibari to his water clone and giving him a hand signal that meant, "Provide overwatch." The clone nodded, and leapt up into the trees above them, disappearing. Kushimaru looked down at his prize, and proceeded to grind Haku's face into the dirt with his foot. "Nice try, freak. But the only head from Gato you'll be getting is his lower one." Now, Kushimaru turned towards the source of malevolence which had just appeared from behind a tree, the blonde, Konoha Genin from Zabuza's hideout. "What's Konoha doing with a Jinchuriki? I thought your Yondaime killed your Biju. Let go of her." Naruto barked, his voice gravelly and rough, his eyes a red tinged violet, rather than their usual blue. Naruto looked positively feral. A sight that surprised Haku. "Naruto," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock at the boy's current appearance. Then, what Kushimaru said finally registered in her mind, "Jinchuriki. Is Naruto like the Mizukage?" A flower of doubt began to bloom within Haku's chest at that thought, one that she quickly smothered. Naruto was not the Mizukage. He was the boy she fell in love with. "And why would I do that, brat? And why do you care anyway? Didn't Zabuza and this?" Kushimaru stamped his foot on Haku's head, drawing a growl from the boy, "thing, trick you into meeting with them? I don't care, just let her go." Naruto's eyes flickered red and gained a slit for a split second before returning to their violet state, though they also flickered with something else, doubt. It happened so fast that most would have missed it, but Kushimaru was one of the most accomplished shinobi alive, and you didn't live as long as he did without being observant, and by seizing on those observations. And Kushimaru did just that. "Are you not a Jinchuriki? Are you not used to being used, boy?" Kushimaru tilted his head as he observed the boy. The boy's eyes held anger, but the doubt Kushimaru saw had returned, this time stronger. What do you mean? Naruto's eyes flicked between Kushimaru and Haku. Haku, the girl he had met in the forest, the girl who teased him, brought him lunch, and always smiled when she saw him. The girl whose eyes brightened when she saw him, the girl who was Zabuza's apprentice. The girl who tricked him. Haku struggled against the wire, knocking off Kushimaru's foot and earning cuts over her body in the process, but she didn't care. Don't listen to him. We never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why lure him to your hideout, away from his sensei? Why not meet in a neutral location? Why the secrecy? Kushimaru cut off Haku, with cold hard logic, as he observed the boy, watching as more doubt crept into his eyes. You're a Jinchuriki, holder of the Kyuubi, correct? Kushimaru stated bluntly, as he watched for the boy's reaction, and he wasn't disappointed. Naruto flinched and gave a reluctant nod, a reflex that told Kushimaru more about the boy's insecurities than his words ever could. Kushimaru knew how he would attack the boy, his humanity. Then you, more than any other shinobi, should understand, you are a tool. That's not true. Naruto denied as he swiped furiously at the air, as if he could knock down Kushimaru's words. I am Uzumaki Naruto, I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Kushimaru finished for the boy, watching as the boy flinched again, his eyes slowly turning from violet to blue, the malevolent aura he produced slowly fading as the anger that fueled it was banked by sadness. You house one of the greatest masses of destruction the world has ever seen. You are a weapon, a deterrent, a tool, and that is all the world will see you as. Naruto had tears in his eyes, which had returned to their normal blue. That's not true, Gigi. I don't know who your Gigi is, kid. Kushimaru cut him off, but I wouldn't put it past your Hokage to pay someone to make you happy and love your village. Kushimaru smirked behind his mask as he saw the boy drop his fighting stance and begin to shrink into himself. Just a little more and the boy would be completely broken. Kushimaru sent a discreet hand signal to his water clone to be ready to go. Kushimaru wanted to bask in the boy's growing despair. Nothing was sweeter to him than breaking a prey down to the point that they welcomed death. That's not true, Naruto began but was cut off by Kushimaru once again. He loves me. Is that what you were going to say? Kushimaru shook his head as he gave the boy a resigned sigh. You are valued for what you are, a Jinchuriki. You are your village's greatest weapon, a Jinchuriki. That is all you are and all you ever will be, and no one could ever love a tool. Naruto fell to his knees, his eyes blank as tears streamed down his face. The world seemed to be getting darker. Was that all he was? A weapon, a tool? Did his Gigi only love him because of what he held? Is that why they wouldn't tell him who his father was? To keep him reliant on them. Just when Naruto's world was about to sink into the darkness of despair, a single voice pierced through the veil of his depression. It was warm and soft as silk. You are Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, and I love you. Haku cried out. You love me. Light began returning to Naruto's world as he turned towards its source and saw Haku. Haku who, even under the heel of Kushimaru, was sending him the same smile that never failed to set his heart at ease and make him feel warm inside. Naruto looked into her eyes, those warm chocolate brown orbs that shone with love. Yes, I love you, Uzumaki Naruto, and that's why I want you to run. Please, save yourself. Haku begged, as she ignored the feeling of her warm blood soaking into her kimono. Kekeki, Kushimaru cackled, I'm afraid I can't let that happen. It's not every day you've got the opportunity to cripple one of the big five. Kushimaru gave the signal to his clone. Haku's eyes were filled with fear as she watched Kushimaru's clone descend from on high, Nuibari poised to drive through Naruto's skull. Just when all hope seemed lost, a pink, bumpy whip lashed out from the trees above the water clone, wrapping it up and stopping its murderous descent. What? Naruto fell on his and crawled backwards from under the trapped water clone. What? Haku stopped her struggling and stared at the pink whip that had saved her boyfriend. She shuddered when she realized that the whip was actually a tongue. A tongue with a mouth on it. Kushimaru was silent. Though if one could see behind his mask, they would find a face that was a rictus of fury. An expression which deepened as he watched the tongue secrete a white liquid that made his water clone's skin bubble and roil until finally causing it to explode into a shower of boiling water, leaving Nuibari to fall and stab itself into the ground. The tongue retracted into the canopy with a wet slurp, causing the leaves to rustle. Needles are for sewing, not for stabbing, the voice of an elderly woman chided. A black blur jumped down from the canopy, landing in front of Naruto and right next to Nuibari. Shima, one of the two great toad sages of Mount Myoboku, had entered the battle. I'll be hanging onto this for ya, she said as she picked up Nuibari and rested it on her shoulder. This'll help me make a new vest for Bunta-chan. The forest was silent as the three shinobi stared at the toad, Naruto, in stunned confusion, Haku, in relief, and Kushimaru, in quiet fury. Naruto was the first to break the silence. You're the toad who was with that old man, Jiraiya, right? Naruto asked as he slowly got up and into a fighting stance, keeping his eyes trained on the madman that had nearly shizkababed him. Naruto swore he saw the man tense when Jiraiya's name left his lips. Yes, Naru-chan, my name is Shima, but you can call me, Ma, the elderly toad answered kindly, as she, too, kept her eyes, as well as her sage senses, trained on the Kiri shinobi, waiting to see what his next move would be. Her eyes darted to the bound Haku and began to take in air and store it in the yellow sacs on her cheeks. Meanwhile, Kushimaru's mind was racing. How dare that toad lay its slimy hands on my Nuibari? When I get my hands on it, I'll string it up by its intestines. Unconsciously, Kushimaru tensed his arms, shifting the ice needles buried in his forearms, sending shooting pains through his body, and breaking the red haze settling over his eyes. Kushimaru took a breath and mentally assessed his situation. The toad summon has my sword, and they mentioned Jiraiya, so it's safe to assume that he's on his way, but why is he here? The Kiri shinobi glanced at the boy. Is it for the brat? Is Konoha so protective of their Jinchuriki that they have their last Sannin trailing him? Kushimaru mentally shook his head and reviewed his injuries, specifically, the two Senbon embedded in his left elbow. Even now, his left arm hung limply at his side, though he could still move his fingers. Regardless, I'm in no condition to fight Jiraiya, the madman glared at the cause of his wounds, nor bring Gato his sleeve. He resisted the urge to lift his foot and drive it through Haku's skull, though that didn't stop him from pressing down with his foot and grinding her head into the dirt. It does no good to kill your meat shield, but that doesn't mean you can't tenderize it. Hey, stop that, Naruto roared, his eyes flashing red as he stepped forward, only to be stopped suddenly. What? He looked down to find a small purple hand gripping his pant leg. Old toad. Don't. He'll get what he deserves soon, Shima stated firmly, her yellow eyes narrowing at Kushimaru. Her yellow vocal sacs had expanded to the size of golf balls. And what do I deserve? A mansion in Tsuki no Kuni. Kushimaru joked as he looked up and continued to grind Haku's head into the dirt, receiving small grunts of pain for his efforts. This is the least you deserve, you little mutant. If you hadn't interfered, Zabuza would be dead. Speaking of, his eyes flicked to the right where he could see Zabuza, still tied to a tree with Kubikiribocho lying broken at his feet, the once mighty weapon now nothing more than its handle and a foot of blade. I need to recover Kubikiribocho and finish him off. Kushimaru focused on Nuibari, and I might have to leave Nuibari behind, something that would make Yondaime-sama furious. Especially leaving it in an enemy village's possession. Kushimaru repressed a shudder at the thought. No, you deserve a good spanking. Shima barked. Now get her foot off the girl and get before you get one. Kushimaru his head, curious, as he stopped grinding Haku's face into the dirt. And why do you care? This little freak. Kushimaru gave Haku a light stomp and jabbed his right thumb towards Zabuza, is the accomplice of a Kiri missing nin, making this a Kiri matter. Kushimaru lowered his arm, resting his right hand on the two Senbon in his elbow as he gauged the distance between him and Zabuza, about 50 yards. Shima saw Kushimaru's hand on the Senbon and tightened her grip on Naruto's pant leg. When tadpoles are in danger, I make it my matter. So Konoha would risk war over the lives of two criminals. Kushimaru shook his head as he plucked the Senbon out of his elbow in a spurt of blood. He kept the needles in his hand as he began channeling chakra to his legs. Too far for a guaranteed kill shot. Distraction it is. No, Jiraiya wouldn't risk war over that, Shima began, raising her voice over Naruto's protest of, old toad. Though Kiri isn't in the position to wage war now, nor in a few years. Now you best leave before Jiraiya gets here, Shima finished by sending a smirk that dripped with smug confidence toward the swordsman. A confidence she didn't feel as she sensed the buildup of Kushimaru's chakra, but not the approaching signatures of her husband and Jiraiya. Where are those two? Perhaps not, Kushimaru said as he raised the Senbon to his face, watching drops of his blood slide down the metal to stain his fingertips, but who's to say Kiri will stand alone? It wouldn't be the first time that Kiri has had help in destroying another nation. Kushimaru took notice of Shima's bulging cheeks. Wind technique. Water. Probably not an area of effect. Something precise. Kushimaru looked down towards his captive, something that won't hit the mutant. Kumo and Iwa, Shima spat as she flared her chakra and glared at the madman. Hurry up, Pa, she thought. Kushimaru shrugged off the look as he slipped the Senbon between his fingers. Kumo, Iwa, or maybe some of the smaller villages. Konoha is the top dog, and a pack of underdogs will always be waiting to throttle you. Though you can avoid that, Kushimaru trailed off, leaving the thought dangling there like a baited hook waiting for a bite as he continued planning, but what's my follow-up? Kushimaru studied Shima's stance and saw her hand grasping the Jinchuriki's pant leg. That will work. Shima saw the ploy for what it was but decided to bite to keep the man talking and buy more time. And how could we do that? By letting you go, she asked, ignoring Naruto's protests as she kept her sage senses honed on the man's chakra to predict his next move. Her eyes flicked to the left, seeing the only cover available for Naruto was some bushes near Zabuza. No, she scolded herself, I'm not throwing a tadpole near a wounded toad when there's a stork nay. Shima cut off her thought when she felt Jiraiya's and Fukasaku's chakra rapidly move towards them from Zabuza's direction. Yes, she cheered, about time, you old coots. Kushimaru began kneading chakra in his stomach. That, and allowing me to complete my mission. Then we can go our separate ways without further bloodshed. I'll even tell my cage that Konoha helped eliminate Zabuza and capture his apprentice. I assure you that Yondaime-sama repays his debts handsomely. Kushimaru finished his offer, lowering his right hand and rolling his wrist. No. Haku yelled as she struggled against Kushimaru's foot, twisting her neck left and right, thrashing her body, feeling new cuts open up on her body as the razor wire sliced into her. You can't let him kill Zabuza-sama. Quiet, Kushimaru growled as he pushed down on her head. You'll get yours soon, he thought darkly. And what about the girl? What happens to her? Shima asked, sensing Fukasaku's chakra flare twice. 2 minutes. It will be serving a new role for one of Kiri's allies, he answered as he curled his left hand's pinky and ring fingers, followed by straightening his index and middle fingers, a half-rat seal. How about a trade? Your sword? She waved Nuibari as she kept her eyes trained on the two Senbon, for the girl. This doesn't have to be messy. Shima felt her husband repeatedly flare his chakra. 1 minute. Kushimaru smiled behind his mask as he puffed out his chest, stepped off Haku, and walked a couple of feet to his left. I'm a proud shinobi from the village of the Bloody Mist. I love it when things get messy. Kushimaru tilted his head, an innocuous action that sent the toad and swordsman into a flurry of motion. Kushimaru flicked his wrist, sending the two Senbon toward the back of Haku's skull as he pushed off the ground and charged the toad and boy, feeling a burst of wind brush past him as he slid his mask to the right, revealing a pale mouth. With great pain, he raised his left hand to his lips. Sweden no jutsu, water style. Water bomb technique, he thought as he fired a high-pressure stream from his lips and towards Shima and Naruto. The toad sage threw Naruto into the bushes as she blew a strong gust of air over Haku's head, deflecting the Senbon and sending the girl tumbling away, just before Shima was tumbled away by the deluge of water from Kushimaru's jutsu and crashing through a tree. However, she kept a hold of Nuibari. Kushimaru smirked as he sent the toad crashing through the forest. He ended the jutsu and let his left arm fall limp, feeling nothing. Still, he didn't dwell on it as he placed his mask back, pivoted to his right, and turned towards Zabuza's location, only to see a dissipating cloud of chakra smoke and 13 Narutos standing next to the bound demon. One of them went over to Kubikiribocho, picked up the broken blade, pointed it at Kushimaru, and yelled, "Charge!" 5 clones followed the order. "This brat," Kushimaru snarled as he met the charge head-on. He dispelled the first clone with a right jab to its throat and the second with a knee to its gut. The third and fourth clones rushed him from his right and left sides with their fists back. Kushimaru scoffed as he swayed to his right, grabbed the right clone's collar, and threw him into the left clone, dispelling both in a large cloud of smoke, which the fifth clone used as cover for a slide tackle aimed at the Kiri Nin's ankles. But the veteran shinobi lightly hopped over the clone, avoiding the attack and using its head as a stepping stone to propel him into the air and toward Zabuza and the 8 remaining Narutos. "Get him!" Clones 6 through 8 yelled as they launched their brethren into the air to ground the soaring madman. Kushimaru saw the incoming clones and made his right arm go limp as he channeled chakra through both arms and spun quickly in the air, using his arms as whips to flay clones, the ice needles in the swordsman's forearms adding to his lethality. Something that the launcher clones soon learned when Kushimaru landed in between them, spun, and turned them all to vapor, leaving only 2 Narutos standing between him and Zabuza. The armed Naruto raised the broken blade above his head, a battle cry halfway out of his lips, when he was backhanded and dispelled, leaving Kubikiribocho to fall to the ground, only for its plummet to be halted by the hand of Kushimaru. Kushimaru twirled the blade as he stepped up to Naruto, who stood right before Zabuza, both glaring defiantly at him. "Any last words, brat, Zabuza? And keep in mind I'm on a schedule," Kushimaru said. "Lu." They both started to speak when Kushimaru cut them off. "Sorry, I'm out of time. Why don't you tell it to the Shinigami?" Exclamation mark quote. Kushimaru cackled as he thrust the blade forward, aiming to stab through Naruto's skull and gut Zabuza. Only for Kubikiribocho to explode in a puff of white smoke as he felt his right arm placed into an arm bar, and his fingers snapped. His mind didn't even have time to process the pain because his instincts screamed at him to move when he heard a rustling above him and saw another Naruto dropping down with Kubikiribocho ready to cut him in half. Kushimaru hastily sent an overpowering burst of chakra through his right arm, overloading the chakra network and exploding the tenketsu in his arm. Still, it was enough to allow him to bend and raise his limb to have the leech on it take some of the blow as Kushimaru stepped back, feeling the tip of the broken blade score his mask before he felt it slice through his forearm and his ulna bone, his vision bleeding red. Naruto landed in a crouch, his eyes crimson and slit, his blonde dripping with Kushimaru's blood, as he reared Kubikiribocho back to thrust it through the madman's black heart. "This is for," he began to yell when he was cut off by a knee to the face and was thrown into the bound Zabuza, the back of his head striking the missing nin's stomach, causing the bound demon to cough up blood and begin an extended inspection of the inside of his eyelids. Naruto's vision darkened. He did not see Kushimaru's foot, emblazoned in a blue chakra shroud, racing for his face. Though he did hear, oddly enough, the clop of a wooden sandal as he slipped into unconsciousness. A loud boom was heard, sending a shockwave through the forest that shook the trees and sent all its nocturnal residents fleeing. At the shockwave's epicenter was Jiraiya, wearing his usual mixture of kabuki and shinobi garb, with the unusual addition of a bulbous, warty nose, toad-like eyes, and a green toad with a mohawk riding on his right shoulder. Kushimaru wasn't in the right state of mind to comment on the Sanin's new additions as his right foot was currently in Jiraiya's right hand in a grip that could crush steel. Kushimaru knew this because he felt like all of the bones in his foot were powderized. Before Kushimaru could beg, fight or scream, Jiraiya pulled back on the captured leg, causing the wielder of Nuibari to stumble forward as the Sannin straightened out the limb and brought his left elbow down on the kneecap. A vicious snap was heard, sounding like a breaking branch as the bones, cartilage, and tendons in Kushimaru's knee ceased to exist. Though Jiraiya wasn't finished as he channeled Kaden Chakra to his left hand, causing it to be engulfed in a fiery blaze. Can't have you bleeding out, Kuriarer, Jiraiya growled, a vicious gleam in his eyes as he seared shut the wound on Kushimaru's right arm. You have a lot to answer for. The pain, being too much for him, sent Kushimaru into the blissful land of unconsciousness. Jiraiya released Kushimaru, letting the man crumple to the ground. He dug into his vest and pulled out a spool of ninja wire and the seal he had made for Naruto. He placed the seal on the swordsman's chest, his eyes lighting with satisfaction when he saw the seal glow blue, signifying a good seal. Pa, can you sense any other hostiles in the area? Jiraiya asked as he began tying up their prisoner. Fukasaku closed his eyes and threw out his senses. What took you so long? Shima shrieked as she hopped up with an awakened silent Haku in her arms and Nuibari on her back. Haku's brown eyes focused on the forms of Naruto and Zabuza, tears of relief and joy streaming down her dirty and bruised cheeks as she saw they were bloody but breathing. Fukasaku winced. I sense a hostile, and I'm married to her, he said weakly. What did you say? Shima barked. Fukasaku's shoulders slumped as he hopped off Jiraiya's shoulder, ending the Sannin's sage mode. Nothing, dear, he muttered as he landed on the ground. That's what I thought. Shima smirked as she placed the girl down and turned to Jiraiya, and to answer your question, no, there's no more hostiles in the area. She then hopped over to Naruto and Zabuza to begin administering medical aid. Jiraiya let out a sigh of relief as he finished securing Kushimaru. That's good, and thank you for your help, Shima-sama, Fukasaku-sama, he said, looking both toads in the eye as he addressed them. I shudder to think what would have happened without your help. Don't mention it, Jiraiya boyo, Fukasaku said as he looked over at the unconscious Naruto being tended to by his wife. That boy's family, even if he doesn't know it yet. I know, Jiraiya said fondly as he gazed at Naruto. What are the chances? You're telling him, Jiraiya. Everything. Fukasaku cut him off as he hopped over to catch Zabuza when his wife ripped the wire. Damn it, Jiraiya cursed under his breath as he walked over to the bound Haku and sat down cross-legged, drawing the girl's attention. Miss, would you care to tell me who you are and why I had to save my godson from Kiri's last loyal swordsman? He asked politely, but Haku could hear the steel hidden behind his words. My name is Yuki Haku and, Haku began telling her story to the Toad Sannin and Toad sages. Naruto woke to the sound of dripping water. Confused, the boy slowly opened his eyes and was greeted by large, leaky iron pipes that hung from a metal ceiling. The pipes faintly glowed orange, flickering like a flame in the wind. How did I get here? Last I remember, I was fighting that sewing freak who tried to kill Haku-chan. Naruto shot to his feet, his blue eyes wide and frantic as he scanned his surroundings. Haku-chan, where are you? The boy yelled, his voice echoing down the tunnel, hoping to hear her light, soothing voice. Instead, the voice that responded was dark and rough. Kukuku, is the brat worried for his mate? Naruto's head whipped to his right. Who are you? Where's Haku? The voice chuckled, come and find out. A bright orange light flared at the end of the tunnel, flowing down the pipes and making Naruto's eyes water. Bastard. Naruto cursed as he rubbed his eyes and began following the glowing pipes, the light at the end of the tunnel disappearing. Naruto couldn't tell how long he walked down the damp, dark tunnel. He had tried to keep track of the passing seconds in his head, but the uneven dripping of the pipes echoing around him threw off his count, much to his annoyance and the voice's amusement. What's the matter? Can't keep time. Is a little water distracting you? The voice tutted. Not much of a shinobi, are you? Shut up. Naruto muttered, his steps becoming more forceful. I'm a good shinobi. Really? The voice asked with faux surprise. I didn't know a good shinobi needed someone to save them. I said, shut up. Naruto growled, his pace quickening as he recalled the old lady Toad saving him from Kushimaru. The image of a bound and crying Haku, watching with fearful eyes as Kushimaru's clone descended, would be forever burned into Naruto's brain. Pathetic. What kind of good shinobi needs an old toad to save them? Though that's not the only time someone saved you, is it? Shut up, Naruto forcefully stated as he began jogging, running towards the voice and away from the memories to little avail. He remembered freezing up in front of the demon brothers, only to be saved from their claws by Kakashi. Naruto recalled Sasuke's mocking question, "Are you okay, scaredy cat?" I never thought I'd agree with an Uchiha, but you are a scaredy cat. Always needing your sensei to save you, isn't that right? Shut up, Naruto roared, his eyes shut as he sprinted down the tunnel, water splashing and splattering off the walls as a dim glow appeared at the end of the tunnel, making it lighter. Though Naruto didn't notice this, he was lost in the memory of Iruka's tear-stained face hovering over his own. The man had protected Naruto from a windmill shuriken thrown by the traitorous Mizuki. The voice scoffed. My least favorite of your life and death situations, insulting how that ingrate could confuse a sniveling whelp for me. The voice roared as a wave of killing intent rushed forth and made Naruto freeze, pausing his mad sprint and making him faceplant into the cold, unforgiving ground. Naruto felt like he couldn't breathe, like he was at the bottom of the ocean with a mountain pressed down on his chest. Zabuza and Kushimaru's killing intents combined couldn't hold a candle to the crushing force Naruto was feeling. The voice darkly chuckled. That's a good little ninja, groveling before your betters. But it's rude to speak to someone without looking them in the eye. The killing intent lessened considerably, making Naruto feel like he was treading choppy waters rather than drowning. Now, get up, the voice commanded. Naruto gasped as he rolled to his back, taking deep, shaky breaths as his blue eyes focused on a crimson-slitted eye that was larger than him, that was embedded in a furry, orange fox head that was bigger than a small house, a head which housed white fangs taller than a full-grown man. Naruto's breath hitched as his mind registered what he was looking at. You're the Kyuubi. Why yes, I am. The Kyuubi grinned as it sent another wave of killing intent towards the boy, less intense than the first but enough to make the boy short of breath. I told you to get up. Naruto shot to his feet, his eyes wide and frightful as they darted to and fro, looking for an avenue of escape. He was in a large room with a giant cage featuring hundreds of thin bars and a piece of paper acting as the lock. Wait, cage. Naruto took a breath and looked beyond the bars to see the towering form of the Kyuubi, its 9 tails lazily waving behind it. Naruto felt a surge of courage flare in his gut at the sight of the mighty Biju behind bars. You think you can order me, damn fox? I'm not the one trapped in a cage. Naruto yelled, only to let out a pitiful yelp as a surge of killing intent fell upon the boy's shoulders, forcing him to his knees. And yet you kneel before me, Kyuubi growled. Know this, Jinchuriki, I may be caged, but I am far better than you or any other human will ever be. Naruto clenched his fists. That's not true, Naruto gritted as he struggled to stand. Humans are better than demons. Oh, and was it demons or humans that sealed me within you, making you a weapon, Jinchuriki? The fox asked mockingly. The fourth sealed you to protect the village, the boy stated as he rose to his feet on shaky legs, his blue eyes glaring fiercely into the fox's red ones. And I am not a weapon. I am Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde roared, his legs steadying as he stared down the fox. The two beings silently looked daggers at one another, the blonde seeing the utter contempt for humanity that dripped from the fox's eyes. In contrast, the fox saw the same calm determination shining in the boy's eyes, reminding it of the bastard fourth Hokage. They held their stare off for what felt like a lifetime. Finally, the boy broke the silence by asking, "What do you want, fox?" The fox reined in its killing intent as it leaned forward, brushing the blonde's bangs with its fetid breath. Nothing you would give me. The Kyuubi's eyes flicked towards the seal for a fraction of a second, scowling at the piece of paper that held it captive before refocusing on its jailer. And nothing you could give. For a second, Naruto swore he saw the mighty Biju's eyes glaze over in sadness before being banked by irritation. I just wanted to meet my jailer, face to face, and I must say, you are pathetic. What was that? Naruto wondered as he observed the beast. Can demons even feel sadness? Then the fox's last words registered in the boy's mind, boy. I'm not pathetic. I'm strong. The fox scoffed, rolling its eyes as it snarked. Sure you are? Asked Kushimaru, the demon brothers, and Mizuki. Or do you not recall your trip down memory lane? The fox then rested its head on its front paws. If it weren't for your sensei, teammate, and most importantly, me, you would be dead, Jinchuriki. The blonde was about to deny the fox's claim but was confused by its last assertion. Huh, what do you mean, me? You've never helped me. Your shoulder, the fox stated. Did you think your mate's ice healed the hole in it? QB snorted, though maybe I should have left it so it'd match the hole between your ears. Oi, the young ninja shouted, reflexively holding his right shoulder, quit insulting me. The QB rumbled, spiking its killing intent, though it was irritated that the boy failed to flinch. Your existence is an insult to my very being, Jinchuriki. Quit calling me, Jinchuriki. Naruto exploded, pointing his finger at the fox. I have a name, use it. It'll be a cold day in hell when I use any human's name, especially a Jinchuriki's, the fox growled, baring its teeth. What do you have against Jinchurikis? Against me, Naruto shouted as he marched towards the cage. Other than being my prison. The Biju snarled as it pressed itself against the cage's bars. How about being sealed into a human for the sole purpose of being a weapon? A glorified chakra battery. How about knowing that your brothers and sisters suffer the same fate? I am not a weapon. Naruto denied it as he stopped right in front of the bars. You are a shinobi. The fox spat as it rose to its full height. And that is what shinobi are. Weapons. You kill and destroy because you're ordered to. And they made me your tool, and for that, I will always hate you and your kind. Now, be gone. The QB roared towards the boy, sending him tumbling away from the cage, down the tunnel he came from, and into the waking world, leaving the fox to stew in its rage and sorrow. Scene change. Naruto shot up, gasping, his blue eyes wide with fright as his ears pounded with the rush of blood. Instincts forged through years of training forced him to scan his immediate surroundings, finding that he was in a familiar room, the guest room in Tezuna's house. The blonde slowly released the held breath in his chest as he tried to calm his racing heart. Was that a dream? The young shinobi wondered as he looked down at his lap, seeing that he had thrown off the covers of his futon during his abrupt wake-up. No, he shook his head, tightly gripping his blanket. That killing intent felt too real to be a dream. Though what did it mean by brothers and sisters? Are there more demons like the fox out there? Are there more people like me? The clicking of the door's latch broke Naruto out of his thoughts. He turned towards the sound, his blue eyes greeted by the sight of his girlfriend standing in the open doorway with a pail of water, smiling at him. Her face was slightly swollen and bruised, which did nothing to detract from the warmth of her shimmering brown eyes. Ha! Naruto began to say, only for the girl to drop the bucket, cross the room in a few strides, and plaster her lips to his own. The blonde's eyes widened for a fraction of a second until they began to flutter close as he lost himself in the feeling of her kiss. Naruto couldn't tell if the kiss lasted seconds or hours, though he could say for sure as Haku drew away that the kiss was better than their last one. Wow! Naruto gasped, opening his eyes. Haku giggled, her face slightly flushed as she cupped Naruto's cheek and began rubbing his whiskers. Yeah, wow. Naruto leaned into her hand. Can I ask why you kissed me? Naruto asked, though he quickly amended his question, not that I mind. Naruto then threw a bright grin her way, I really don't mind. I'd hope so. It would worry me if my boyfriend didn't like kissing me. Haku teased, trailing off as she bent down towards Naruto's ear, her lengthy, black hair curtaining them from view as she whispered, because I really like kissing my boyfriend. She punctuated her statement with a kiss on Naruto's neck, drawing a moan from the boy. Haku pulled back, a satisfied smile on her face as she returned to rubbing her boyfriend's whiskers, a therapeutic gesture for both of them. Naruto sent a shy smile toward Haku, his face burning red as his pupils began to dilate. He drank in her form until he noticed the bandages wrapped around her upper arms that disappeared under her pink kimono. Naruto's smile evaporated as he remembered how his girlfriend got those injuries. Haku-chan, are you okay? He asked as he grasped her hand, stopping her ministrations. Why wouldn't I be? She asked as she followed her boyfriend's eyes, seeing them focused on her bandages. Oh, she gasped, releasing his cheek and placing it on her chest. You don't have to worry, Naruto-kun. Shima-sama dressed my wounds and assured me there wouldn't be any scars, she reassured the boy with a smile. Oh, that's good, Naruto smiled, though her answer reminded him of their amphibian rescuer. Shima's the old lady toad who saved me, right? By the way, what happened? I know that Kushimaru knocked me out. Naruto trailed off as he looked away from Haku, the images of his failure in saving her and Zabuza flashing in his mind. He wasn't allowed to stew in shame for long as he felt Haku gently grab his chin and tilt it towards her. Haku looked Naruto straight in the eyes, her brown orbs shimmering with tears, a grateful smile on her face. Naruto, you protected Zabuza-sama. You stalled Kushimaru, placing yourself in danger, Haku sobbed. Even though I lied to you. Her tears began streaming down her face as guilt gripped her heart. I'm sorry. She let go of Naruto's chin, turning away from him as she made to stand up. I should. Haku was cut off as Naruto pulled her into his chest. I love you, Haku, Naruto said into her ear as he wrapped her in his arms. And I forgive you. Haku's eyes widened as she tightened her grip on Naruto's shirt and soaked his shoulder with her tears. They held each other for a few minutes, with Haku's sobs subsiding until she finally placed her hands on Naruto's chest and pushed herself up, staying in Naruto's arms as she looked down towards her boyfriend. Naruto looked up at his girlfriend, taking in her red cheeks, puffy eyes, and messed up hair. He got struck with a sense of deja vu, which made him chuckle. Haku arched an eyebrow. What's so funny? Just reminded of our first date, Naruto explained as he stroked her hair. You're beautiful, Haku-chan. I remember. Haku blushed, a fond smile on her face. A smile that soon turned sensual as she lifted her right leg, straddled Naruto's hips and slid her left hand from his chest to the back of his neck, threading her fingers through his blonde hair, though I forget what I did after your compliment. She leaned down, her breath brushing his lips, whispering, could you remind me? Before Naruto could act, he and Haku froze at the sound of perverted giggling. He, you were right, Kakashi-kun, this boy is a goldmine. And those notes you took, you'll be getting a writing credit in my next book. Thank you, Jiraiya-sama. Slowly, Haku and Naruto looked to the open doorway, finding two of the most fearsome shinobi Konoha has produced, Jiraiya of the Sannin and Kakashi of the Sharingan, furiously scribbling in notepads and giggling. Go on, don't mind us, Jiraiya motioned for the couple to continue with a wave of his hand. Yes, please don't stop on our account, Kakashi gave the two teens his patented, I smile. The two teens looked away from the door and towards each other, noticing that both faces were doing remarkable impersonations of lobsters. Jiraiya and Kakashi quickly left the doorway, cackling as they fled downstairs to avoid the futon, pillow, hail of ice sanbon, and a pair of sandals that peppered the hallway wall. A few minutes later, Naruto and Haku walked down the stairs, where they found the rest of the shinobi gathered around the dining room table. Jiraiya was sitting at the head of the table, a stoic expression on his face as he read from a scroll. Kakashi was seated on one side of the table, leaning back in his chair and reading from his orange book. Sitting across from Kakashi were Sasuke and Sakura, with Sakura staring longingly at the Uchiha, while the boy in question was studiously ignoring her and throwing cautious glances towards their last table guest, Zabuza. The former demon of the mist sat opposite Jiraiya, sporting crossed arms, a scowl, and more bandages than usual, with a repaired Kubikiribocho leaning against the table. Good afternoon, Zabuza-sama, Haku greeted her master as she sat beside his left while Naruto sat between her and Kakashi. How are your injuries? Zabuza's scowl softened. They're fine, he rolled his shoulders and flared his chakra a bit sore, but I can finally channel chakra now. The missing nin then looked towards Naruto. Hey, brat. Naruto's eyebrows twitched. Yeah, no brows. Zabuza's non-existent eyebrows twitched. He had a barb on his tongue when he spied the slightest narrowing of Haku's eyes. Zabuza sighed, swallowing his retort, before continuing. I just wanted to thank you for helping with Kushimaru. It's no big deal, Naruto replied, scratching the back of his head. It was the right thing to do. Zabuza scoffed. The right thing to do. That isn't a line a shinobi says. Well, it's a line that this shinobi says. Naruto stood up and jabbed his thumb at his chest as he stared Zabuza straight in the eye. And I'll say it till and after I become Hokage. They held the stare for a couple of seconds before Zabuza chuckled. You know what, kid, you may just do that. Hopefully, Haku and I will be right there to see it. Zabuza then turned his attention to the eldest shinobi, who was looking at Naruto with a proud gleam in his eyes. Jiraiya-sama, what's the word from the Hokage? Jiraiya held up the scroll in his hands. Our Hokage is willing to hear you and Haku out, particularly Haku. Jiraiya mock coughed as he held up the scroll like a town crier about to read a proclamation, and I quote, I can't wait to meet my grandson's first girlfriend. Treat her like a gentleman. Or I'll tell your Ayame-chan to ban you from Ichiraku's for a month. Everyone got a good laugh at the blushing young couple. Jiraiya waited for the table to settle before he adopted a more serious expression, though your meeting will have to wait till we deal with Gato. He rolled up his scroll and slid it to Kakashi. So Sandaime-sama wants us to eliminate Gato? Kakashi asked as he opened the scroll and scanned it, his one visible eye widening as it got to the bottom of the scroll. He wants my genin to participate. Sakura gulped. Hokage-sama wants us to kill Gato. Sasuke grunted as he rested his chin on his laced fingers. Naruto remained silent, though the sudden tensing of his shoulders and the slight curling of his lip told the veteran shinobi all they needed to know of what he thought about the Hokage's decision. Jiraiya nodded as he addressed Kakashi. He thought it would be a good opportunity for your team to get their first kills in a safe environment. In addition, Sensei's worried about Gato's ties to Kiri. He doesn't want the current Mizukage to get a foothold so close to Hai no Kuni. I see, Kakashi rubbed his chin. Do you know where Gato's base of operations is? Yes, I've had my summons trailing his goons. Gato's got a warehouse near the docks that must be neutralized, but his main base is the daimyo's castle on the north shore. My summons count his men at around 5 dozen. Jiraiya looked toward Zabuza. Does that sound right? Yeah, though we'll have to go tonight. Gato's a rat. When Kushimaru doesn't show up, he'll flee, Zabuza advised as he placed his hand on Kubikiribocho's pommel. Speaking of, what happened to Kushimaru? I owe him a few cuts. I secured Kushimaru in a prisoner scroll and had him delivered to Konoha, Jiraiya answered. Right now, he should be in the custody of RTI division. The Sannin then turned towards the Konoha Jonin. Kakashi, you'll take Sasuke and Sakura to deal with the warehouse, while Naruto, Haku, Zabuza, and I will deal with Gato. Sasuke interjected, and why does Naruto get to assault Gato's main compound? Because he can summon an army of Kage Bunshin, shadow clones, at the drop of a hat, and because I said so, Jiraiya explained as he narrowed his eyes at Sasuke. Any other questions, Genin? Jiraiya asked, stressing Sasuke's rank. Sasuke, deciding discretion was the larger part of valor, shook his head and said, no, sir. Good, Jiraiya nodded. I'll leave some summons here as guards. In addition, I want Naruto to leave a team of 10 clones scattered across the house using the Henge no Jutsu, transformation technique, to disguise themselves as household objects, just in case. Seeing Naruto's nod, Jiraiya addressed the group, we move out in 20 minutes. Jiraiya stood up, pushed away from the table, and walked towards the front door. Hey, old man, a voice said from behind him, causing the elder shinobi to stop at the door. Looking over his shoulder, he saw a familiar pair of cool blue eyes staring sharply into his own, commanding his attention, just like the boy's father used to do back in the day. After our mission, we need to talk, Naruto stated, his voice measured and determined. Jiraiya tightly nodded, then left out the door, leaving the other shinobi to prepare for the night's grisly work. Scene change. Just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky a dark orange and dashing the dirt streets with long shadows, 3 shinobi landed on a roof across from Gato's warehouses. They could see 3 men outside, standing guard. "What's the plan, sensei?" Sakura asked as she nervously fingered the ring of her kunai, her green eyes studying the 3 men below her. Kakashi rubbed his chin. "We need to clear the warehouses, find evidence regarding Gato's dealings with Kiri or any other useful information and eliminate his men." Sakura shuddered at Kakashi's use of the word, eliminate. "Do we have to kill them, sensei?" Sakura stuttered, her hands beginning to shake, her pupils turning into pinpricks as she started taking short sharp breaths through her nostrils. "Can't we just knock them out? Leave them for Sakura. Name and registration number," Kakashi firmly said as he crouched down and placed his hands on his genin's shoulders, cutting off her ramblings. "Haruno Sakura, 012601. Sakura's breathing calmed. Again. "Haruno Sakura, 012601. Her hands stopped shaking. Again. "Haruno Sakura, 012601. Her eyes returned to normal. "Are you good?" Kakashi asked. Sakura nodded. "Yes." Kakashi gave her shoulders a gentle squeeze. "I know you don't like the idea of killing, and frankly, I'd be worried if you did. But part of our roles as shinobi is to act as the shields and the swords of our cage. I understand if you can't handle this, and I won't judge you for it. I'll leave a clone up here with you while Sasuke and I deal with Gato's men. However, I will have to report this to the Hokage, and you will likely be removed from the shinobi forces." Sakura's eyes widened. Buts. You're a shinobi, a soldier. And sometimes, soldiers have to kill," Kakashi explained. "Now, what do you want to do?" Kakashi's question hung in the air as Sakura looked inwards, asking herself, "Can I do this? Of course, we can do this. We're the kunoichi of the year." Her inner voice answered. "And what would Sasuke-kun think if we couldn't do this? But we're talking about killing people." Sakura argued back. "Wouldn't that make us bad?" She then spared a glance towards her crush, noting that the boy hadn't said a word, his eyes trained on the street below. Would Sasuke still want us after? Sakura could practically feel her inner voice roll its eyes as it stated, "Sasuke's a shinobi, he'll be in the same boat as us." "Oh, you're right," Sakura sheepishly thought. Plus, her inner voice explained in a gentler tone, "If we want to be a kunoichi, we'll have to do this. Because as Sensei said, sometimes, soldiers have to kill." Sakura gulped at that thought, then took another look at Sasuke and decided. Taking a deep breath, she turned to her sensei. "I can do this." Kakashi patted her on the shoulders as he stood up. "Good. Know that after this, my door will be open for you, or you can speak to a member of the Yamanaka clan." Kakashi looked over his shoulder. "The same goes for you, Sasuke." Sasuke grunted, his eyes tracking the goons, a kunai gripped tightly in his right hand. Kakashi restrained from sighing as he walked to the roof's ledge. "Now," the Jonin said, his visible eye hardening on the 3 guards, "here's the plan, honey trap." Scene change. Nibui leaned against the warehouse, picking at the dirt underneath his nails with the tip of his tanto. "I'm bored," Namakemano yawned, scratching his long, hairy forearms as he lazily scanned the empty streets. The villagers knew better than to walk by Gato's warehouses, especially at night. Nibui grunted in agreement while grooming when he felt a tap on his right shoulder. "What, Akio?" Nibui grumbled as he turned towards the 3rd guard. Akio pointed down the street. "Look." Namakemano and Nibui followed the man's finger, their eyes lighting up as they landed on the svelte form of a young, black-haired woman wearing a red kipao dress. She was taking small, shuffled steps, her head down as her long hair hid her eyes. "Well, looks like the entertainment's arrived," Nibui quipped as he pushed off the wall, walking out into the street and stopping in front of the woman, startling her. "Hello, what's a pretty thing like you doing out so late?" Are you lost? He asked, leaning forward and leering at her. The woman yelped, squeaking like a mouse, as she stumbled backward and ran into the arms of Namakemano. She looked up into the goon's black, beady eyes, her green eyes wide with fright. Hey, it's all right, the long-armed thug cooed as he tightened his grip on the lady. Why don't you let these uncles help you? The woman lowered her head, her green orbs curtained by her dark locks as she fell deathly silent. Nibui chuckled. I'm not hearing, eh? No. The large brute locked eyes with his comrade and jerked his head towards a nearby alley. Namakemano nodded, a salacious grin on his face as he dragged the unresistant woman towards the dark alley, followed by Nibui. Neither man saw a shadow descend on the third guard, Akio, as they exited the street. Namakemano pushed the lady against a wall, placing his knee between her thighs as he pinned her arms above her head with his left hand. The goon was surprised when the woman wrapped her legs around his waist. Looks like we got a kinky one, Nibui joked as a man with gray hair glared down at him unnoticed. Looks like, Namakemano agreed as he leaned towards her. Now, give us a key. The woman's head shot forward, her large forehead striking the goon on the tip of his chin, cracking his jaw, scrambling his brain, and making him bite down on his tongue so hard he chomped it in half. Reflexively, the thug released the lady's arms as his legs gave out and crumpled to the ground, the girl following him down as she wrapped her hands around his throat. Nibui made to grab her when Kakashi dropped down behind him and snapped his neck with a sharp crack. A similar crack, though duller, was heard a second later. Kakashi observed his student as she sat on the corpse, staring down at her hands still around its throat. She didn't even notice that the henge transformation around her had faded, returning her hair to its natural pink and her body to its cultish appearance. Kakashi was about to say something when he saw Sakura slowly release the man's throat and stand up on shaky legs. She walked 2 steps and promptly vomited in the alleyway. The Jonin looked upon her with a mixture of sadness and understanding as he watched Sakura empty the contents of her stomach. He had vomited after his first kill. He stood there, waiting for the genin to finish, resisting the urge to comfort her because the mission came first. When the girl's retching subsided and turned into shallow breaths, her commanding officer asked her, "Are you good?" The young kunoichi spat out some remaining bile, then looked deep into her commanding officer's eye, seeing no judgment nor pity, only concern. The genin took a shuddering breath before straightening her back. I'm good. The jonin nodded. Return to the roofs and watch the back entrance of the warehouse. Sakura quickly channeled her chakra to her feet and climbed up the nearby wall. Kakashi watched her disappear over the roof, then crouched near the corpses and observed their faces, committing their looks to memory. When he was satisfied, he stood up and summoned a shadow clone. They both then transformed into the dead men, Kakashi taking the form of Nibui, while his clone took the form of Namakemano. The transformed men quickly examined one another for any obvious faults with the illusion, 2 small eyes, 2 large ears, etc. But found nothing to correct. Satisfied, the real Kakashi left the alley first while his clone stacked the corpses on one another before flashing through hand signs. Kakashi ignored the bright orange flash behind him as he approached the warehouse's front door, where Sasuke stood in the guise of the third guard. Any company? The jonin asked, scratching his chin. Sasuke shook his head, slightly tightening his grip on Akio's polearm. Nope. The streets, dead. His transformed brown eyes flicked towards the alley, where the flash of light had died down, and Namakemano had emerged. And how was your company? She was good, Kakashi grunted as he opened the front door and walked inside the warehouse with Sasuke silently trailing behind him, leaving the polearm leaning against the wall. The first thing that greeted the 2 transformed ninjas was the pungent smell of chemicals, followed by laughter from a room at the end of the hallway. No fire, Kakashi whispered to his student as they walked down the hallway, approaching the sounds of laughter. Understood, Sasuke answered, his voice equally low, as they walked by a wide doorway covered by thick, black curtains. Curious, They stopped and slightly parted them, seeing the warehouse floor and finding Gato's drug operation in full tilt. They observed men in cloth masks and rubber gloves working at tables where they appeared to be soaking and straining some white mixture and turning it into a white paste. What are they making? Sasuke asked as he watched one man take some of the paste and mold it into a brick. Cocaine, Kakashi replied as he scanned the room and saw a windowed office overlooking the warehouse floor. It's a stimulant derived from a plant found and grown in southern Cha no Kuni. It's highly addictive and can lead to heart attacks. Sasuke counted the men in the room, 20. I kind of wish the Dobi was here, his clones would make good meat shields. True, Kakashi agreed as he stepped away from the curtains. But we'll just have to make do. He then turned and continued down the hallway toward the end room. Sasuke followed his sensei. They passed by one more door that was closed and locked. Kakashi paused, pushing his ear against the door and channeling chakra to his ears. He heard the unmistakable sounds of painful defecation. What is it? Sasuke asked, his eyes shifting from the end room to the warehouse floor entrance. Bathroom. And it's occupied, Kakashi answered as he cut the chakra to his ears. Stay here and watch the hallway, the Jonin ordered. Sasuke jabbed his thumb toward the door. And what about the bathroom? What if he comes out? Kakashi ran his thumb across his throat. Make sure it stays occupied. Sasuke's eyes narrowed before nodding as he leaned against the wall near the door, arms crossed against his chest, a scowl on his face. Seeing his student in position, the leader of Team 7 went to the final room and opened up the door, finding a small break room and 5 more guards. 4 played cards around a small table, while the 5th leaned on a small counter smoking a cigarette. Nibui, the you doin' here? You're supposed to be out front, the smoker said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the large man standing in the doorway. There was something off about him that was setting his instincts on edge. Unconsciously, his right hand moved closer to the handle of his katana propped up against him. Nibui noticed the smoker's actions as he entered the room, closing the door behind him. Needed to shit, but someone's in the can. One of the card players, the one facing the door, released a bark of a laugh, his face flushed from alcohol. You dumbass, you forget that Atsuo's been in there for the past hour. Nibui shrugged his shoulders. Thought the moron would be done by now. Nibui noticed the smoker tense as he gripped his katana and stood up. Something one of the other card players noticed as he glanced from the smoker towards Nibui. The disguised Jonin quickly gauged their positions and distances and devised an attack plan. He channeled chakra through his right arm as he prepared to drop his Henge Jutsu transformation technique. Moron. That's a new one. You usually call him shit for brains, the card player with his back to the transformed man said over his shoulder. Nibui locked eyes with the smoker as he said, I felt a change was in order. The big man was suddenly covered by a large plume of white smoke, shocking the guards in the room. The smoker instinctively drew his blade, his mind barely processing the 4 shadows flying out of the smoke, followed by 4 meaty-sounding thunks. He opened his mouth to shout but found himself jerked forward and quickly placed in a headlock with an arm wrapped around his throat. There's no need for that, Kakashi chided into his ear, sounding like he was scolding a small child as he casually knocked the man's weapon out of his hand. Now, tell me all you know about Gato's drug operation, the Jonin ordered as he eased the pressure on the man's throat, just enough so he could speak. The smoker glared straight ahead as he opened his mouth to yell, only for the Jonin to grasp his jaw and squeeze. The smoker felt his jaw creak and his teeth crack. First warning, the scarecrow shinobi growled. This can be quick and painless like your friends over there. Kakashi jerked the smoker's head down, so his eyes could focus on the 4 corpses surrounding the table. Each corpse had black knives buried near the hilt in their skulls. Or this can be slow and painful. A few seconds passed as the smoker stared at the 4 bodies, their faces twisted in shock as blood and brain matter leaked from their ears and nostrils. He then slowly nodded into Kakashi's grip. The Jonin eased his grip. Good, now tell me about Gato's businesses here in Nami no Kuni. During Kakashi's interrogation, I killed a man, Sasuke thought with a clinical distance, remembering the guard he had executed under Kakashi's watchful eye, the guard whose guise he was currently wearing. The Uchiha Genin recalled swooping down like a striking falcon, sinking his kunai into the back of the man's neck right near the base of the skull, severing the brain stem. The man didn't even know what hit him. As the fresh corpse fell to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut, Sasuke ensured to catch the man's polearm before it could strike the ground and make noise. It was a textbook assassination, and Sasuke felt nothing. Not rage nor guilt. At best, all the Uchiha heir felt for the man was apathy. He was an obstacle in his way that needed to be dealt with. And that bothered the young man. Is this how that person felt? Sasuke frowned, staring down at his hands. They were tan with short stubby fingers, the complete opposite of his own, which were pale with long, thin fingers. The same fingers as that person. Am I turning into them? The young genin clenched his fists and glared at the opposite wall, silently vowing, no, I refuse. I will never be like them. The sound of a flushing toilet made the genin tense. His eyes flicked to the curtains to see if anyone was coming through as he took out a kunai. Sasuke heard the lock unlatching and prepared himself. The door opened, revealing a bald man with sunken cheeks and a stud piercing his nose. He took one step out of the bathroom and quickly felt a sharp prick in his throat as his world went dark. Sasuke caught the body midfall and dragged it into the bathroom, slamming the door shut with his shoes, his nose wrinkling at the awful stench. What the hell did this guy eat? The Uchiha muttered as he dropped the corpse and began patting it down, searching for valuable information. Finding nothing, he retrieved his kunai, pulling the blade out with a wet splat and wiping it on the man's shirt. Hey, Atsuo, you still shitting your guts out? A gruff voice asked from behind the door. Sasuke's eyes widened in panic. His mind froze. He looked from the door to the body, appearing like a kid with his hand caught in the cookie jar or, in Sasuke's case, a kid with a corpse in the bathroom. The doorknob turned, causing the door latch to click. The door's unlocked. The door began to open, revealing the silhouette of a large man. The genin's mind faded into the background as he let his body take over. Instinctively, he channeled chakra to his eyes, his vision becoming sharper as his world seemed to slow down as he threw the kunai in his hand at the man's throat. Sasuke watched with panicked satisfaction as the large man's eyes seemed shocked with surprise, only for the wind to be taken out of the genin's sails as he watched the large man effortlessly catch the blade between his fingers. Oh, it's you, Akio. The large man closed his eyes, bending his eyelids into an upside-down U shape that looked like a smile. Sasuke sighed, feeling the adrenaline drain out of his body quickly as he realized it was his sensei. Yeah, it's me. I'll wait for you to finish. Don't take too long, Kakashi said, closing the door when he stopped. Oh, I almost forgot. Here, the transformed Jonin stepped forward and handed Sasuke's kunai back to him. Now be careful with that, Kakashi chided, wagging his finger. You might poke someone's eye out with that thing. The Uchiha rolled his eyes as he returned the dagger to his sleeve. I'm good to go now. Great to hear, Kakashi stated, turning on his heel and exiting the bathroom, his student trailing behind him. He waited for the genin to close the bathroom door before updating him on what he learned in the break room while honing his senses on the curtains leading to the drug lab. Did anyone come in the hallway while I was gone? The Jonin asked. The genin shook his head. Negative. Not one. Interesting, Kakashi commented, analyzing that piece of information. The men in the warehouse either have bladers of steel, or they are going out back to piss. We'll need to reconfirm their numbers. Speaking of, I confirmed Jiraiya-sama's intel. These warehouses and the former daimyo's castle are Gado's only bases in Nami no Kuni. Once we're done here, it will be up to Jiraiya's team to finish their part. Sasuke crossed his arms. And how do we do that? You told me no fire jutsu. Kakashi nodded. I did because fire and chemicals make bigger fire or make boom, and I don't think the good people of Nami would appreciate a giant conflagration or explosion, my little firebug, the Jonin mockingly explained. Sasuke scowled at the jab. Then what are we going to do? His eyes flicked toward the curtains. The Uchiha was confident he could take all the men alone if ordered. Kakashi motioned for his student to follow him as he approached the curtains. He slightly peeled back the black cloth and counted the men on the floor, finding 20 men busy making drugs. Huh, convenient, the Jonin thought. Not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, Kakashi mentally measured the room as he planned to eliminate the men. About 300 square meters, he concluded as he ran through the mental catalog of the jutsu he knew and thought of one that fitted the situation perfectly. He drew back from the curtains and turned towards his student. There are many ways to skin a cat, oh dour student of mine, and, thankfully, your awesome sensei knows 1,000 of them. Sasuke resisted the urge to roll his eyes at his teacher's boasting, but he was intrigued. And what jutsu will you be using? Nihon Shoja no Jutsu, Nirvana Temple Technique, a genjutsu that lulls targets in an area into a deep sleep, Kakashi explained as he cancelled his transformation, placed his hands in the tiger seal, and began carefully molding his chakra for the technique. Sasuke's eyebrows rose at the action. And if you could do that this whole time, why didn't you? Because you and Sakura needed experience in eliminating targets on your own, and I'm not skilled enough with this technique to cover the entirety of this warehouse, Kakashi told his genin as he finished molding the chakra. The Jonin then motioned towards the curtains with his chin. Would you kindly? Sasuke widely peeled back the cloth and watched his sensei casually stroll through the opening and towards the center of the room, surprising the drug workers. What the? One of the workers began to say as he rose from his stool at the sight of the one-eyed shinobi, only to be distracted by a bunch of white feathers fluttering down from the ceiling. For some reason, the feathers made him feel tired. So, very tired. The man's eyes drooped shut as he fell to the ground, banging his head on his table on the way down. Sasuke watched, amazed at how fast the jutsu neutralized the 20 guards. I need to learn some genjutsu, he concluded. Kakashi ended his jutsu and looked over his shoulder. Sasuke, go outside and tell my clone to retrieve Sakura while I deal with them. Then we'll search this place for further intel about Gato's operations. Understood, Sasuke responded as he cancelled his transformation and left to fulfill his sensei's orders. Kakashi turned towards the unconscious group of goons, drew a kunai, and began quickly and efficiently slicing each man's throat. I wonder how Jiraiya-sama is faring, he muttered as he slashed his fifth throat. Scene change. The daimyo's castle sat upon a cliff overlooking the sea. It was 3 stories built in a pagoda style and constructed of wood and stone. The castle had a dirt courtyard enclosed by a 10-foot tall wall where a few of Gato's men patrolled while 2 others guarded the thick wooden gates, the only entry for ordinary men. When we reach the top, Zabuza, you and I will deal with the men patrolling the grounds while Naruto and Haku infiltrate and clear the top floor, capturing Gato if they find him. If not, they'll have an opportunity when you and I begin clearing the first and second floors, Jiraiya explained as he and his group slowly scaled the cliff face, sticking to it with their chakra. Zabuza chuckled as he walked next to the elder shinobi while the 2 younger shinobi trailed behind them. Make the rat seek higher ground. Exactly. Though, why does the Hokage want us to capture the midget? I thought he wanted him dead. He does, but he'd rather let the villagers swing the blade. I see, Zabuza said as he looked over his right shoulder, seeing the blonde whispering something into Haku's ear. Are you sure the Gaki is up for this? Zabuza asked, his voice low with a tinge of worry. Jiraiya stifled a snort as he glanced behind him, seeing Haku nod towards his godson, a serious look on her face. Never thought I'd see the Kurigakure no Kijin worried about a kid, he can handle Gato's goons. Zabuza scoffed, facing ahead, noting they were 100 feet from the ledge. You know that's not what I'm worried about. I know, Jiraiya sighed, taking one last look at the young couple, seeing the care and worry the young woman had for his godson. The sight lightened his heart as he looked forward, but he has Haku caring for him. Zabuza didn't respond. He rolled his shoulders, adjusting his blade so that its handle was sticking over his right shoulder, though hidden beneath his bandages was a small smile. The group crested the top of the cliff, climbed over the ledge, and found themselves 50 meters away from the back of the castle. Jiraiya gestured towards the two young shinobi, holding up 3 fingers with his right hand for a second, then quickly lowered 2 fingers and pointed down with his pointer. The young couple nodded, then rushed towards the castle, clearing the distance in a blink of an eye as they leapt from the first roof to the second and finally the third without making a sound. Jiraiya and Zabuza waited 3 minutes, then rushed the castle themselves, clearing the distance even faster than their young charges as they leapt straight to the second roof without a sound. They circled toward the front courtyard, peered over the ledge, and started counting their targets. 13 men were in the courtyard. A trio patrolled the western wall, 2 with hands on their weapons while the third held a lantern. A duo leaned against the eastern wall, smoking cigarettes. A group of 5 were in the middle of the courtyard, crouched around a game of dice near some lit braziers. 1 was in the northeast corner taking a piss in the shadows. The final 2 were guarding the inside of the gates. Jiraiya processed this information in a matter of seconds. The toad sage raised his hands, placing them in a cross-shaped seal. You take the center, I'll take the flanks. Meet at the gates. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique, the Sennin thought as a double of himself phased into existence, crouched on its creator's right. Zabuza grasped the handle of his blade. This will be fun, he chuckled, channeling chakra to his legs. Go, Jiraiya ordered. As soon as the command left his lips, he and his clone leapt from the roof. The original took the left, while his clone took the right. Zabuza waited a second before he leapt off the roof, aiming to land in the center of the gambling goons. Jiraiya's clone landed on the ground with a clop of its Geta sandals and shot off like a rocket, reaching into its left sleeve as it did so and pulling out 2 kunai. One of the smokers heard the sound of sandals. He looked over towards the noise as he took a drag of his cigarette, only to choke on the smoke at the sight of a large man in kabuki clothing charging toward him. In true, he began to cough out, only to be cut off by something piercing his neck. He suddenly felt something warm trickling down his neck as his legs turned to jelly. His legs gave out from under him as he fell to the ground, landing on his knees. He reached up towards his throat with numb fingers and felt something hard, cold, and slick with liquid. As this, his mind trailed off as his vision rapidly darkened, his final thought. The second smoker's death was more merciful, for the clone's kunai had pierced the side of the man's skull, striking his brain and killing him instantly. Jiraiya's clone left behind the cooling corpses as it proceeded toward its final target, who was zipping up his fly. The clone closed the distance instantly, appearing behind the guard and wrenching the man's neck, producing a sharp crack as the man quickly stilled. The clone frowned as it let the body drop. It then turned on its heel and rushed towards the gate. At the same time, the last loyal Sannin soared through the air, flashing through 6 hand seals with a speed that most Jonin would be hard-pressed to track, channeling chakra through the roots of his long hair as he descended upon the patrolling group of guards like a swooping falcon. Hari Jizo, Needle Jizo, the elder shinobi thought as he felt his long mane of hair extend, harden, and sharpen around his body, forming a spiky shell that would make a sea urchin jealous. The legendary ninja landed on one of the guards, crushing and skewering the man and splattering his compatriots with his blood. The other 2 men were still shocked, their minds still trying to process the sudden loss of their comrade, when the elder shinobi formed a single seal, directing the chakra to his scalp to launch his hardened hair follicles into the 2 goons. Hari Jigoku, Needle Hell, the 2 goons were riddled with a barrage of hardened hair needles that peppered their bodies, making them look like macabre porcupines as they fell lifelessly to the ground. Jiraiya released his technique, his long mane reverting to its less deadly form as he sprinted toward the gate, noticing out the corner of his eye that Zabuza had descended on his hapless victims. As Zabuza fell, he charged chakra through Kubikiribocho, sharpening its edge as he landed in the middle of the group, crushing their dice underneath his heels and sending bills of Ryo flying into the air. Before the guards could process his sudden appearance, Zabuza swung his massive blade in a circle, bisecting the 5 men and showering the courtyard with blood and viscera. His job done, The former Kiri Nin rushed towards the unfortunate gate guards who had watched the murderous mutilation happen with wide eyes. The leftmost guard dropped his spear while his partner shakily raised his as they both stared down their oncoming death when something pierced their skulls, rendering their worlds black forever. Oi, those were my kills, Zabuza whispered, appearing next to the original Jiraiya. The Sannin merely rolled his eyes as he crouched down and retrieved his kunai from his kill, wiping the blade on the dead goon's shirt before returning it up his sleeve. He looked at his clone and motioned toward the gate.